What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Turn on the Jets podcast. We got the two-man pod tonight, myself and Connor Rogers. And the Jets finally lost, so fire everybody edition, because we all know how everybody reacts after their team loses their first game of the season. It's generally about the end of the world. Connor, how you doing tonight? You ready for this little Tuesday night two-man pod? Is both Dalbin and Cole have, I believe, a sister and a mom birthday tonight. Maybe they're too upset about the Jets loss on Sunday to talk about it. I don't blame them, but how you doing tonight?
Doing good.
Let's start with what happened on Sunday. So I know you work at the Bleacher Report full time, so you're normally in office on Sundays. Myself, I was here with my two cousins who are big Jet fans. I've actually written for the site at times in the past, and when the Jets were up 21-3. It was kind of creeping up. It was just I was already looking at the clock in the first half. There was like 7 minutes to go in the first quarter, and I was already looking at the clock, just praying it would run faster, because you knew that onslaught was going to come at some point, and you just kind of hoped that the Jets had enough space or could make enough plays. And you could see it even when it was 21-9 that they were going to need to get to 30 to win the game. The 21 or 24 wasn't going to be enough, and unfortunately, I think the game really turned, as we'll get to, on that interception by Gino Smith going into the end zone. That interception falls in a lot of different places, obviously, and then the subsequent 97-yard drive for a touchdown. It was obviously a gut punch loss. It sucks to blow that big of a lead. It sucks to see just how good this team could be, and then just how bad they could be, side by side. But there's some positives and there's some negatives to take from it, but I'm not shocked by kind of the onslaught of very negative reaction coming out of the loss like that. It's understandable from any fan base. And, what were your thoughts going through the game on Sunday, early and then watching, the Packers come back?
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I mean, I was at work, but obviously we watch all the games. A lot of my work is involved watching the games and building off ideas and stuff. So I got to watch the Jet game straight through, and it's the same thing. I mean, all my coworkers, before work were saying, "Oh, I don't think their secondary can keep them in the game even through the first half." And when the Jets went up 21-3, I was like, "All right, they caught a couple of breaks here. The fumbled snap to begin the game, which they actually fell on, which it feels like the Jets never do." But like you, I was just watching the clock, and when you're playing a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, who I think is the best quarterback in football. I've said it for the last 2 years. A lot of people in the league think he's the best quarterback in football. No lead is safe, and it felt that way with this team. And I think the biggest thing is once Decker went out, it was, how can Gino Smith work a miracle and get points on the board right now? Because nobody was open at all.
Yeah, I think when we're kind of looking at, I guess, what you want to call scapegoats for this game, it was the offense basically seemed to shut down in the second half. They weren't able to run the ball at all, which is a little concerning. And really, I tweeted this stat out yesterday. When you take away Chris Ivory's touchdown run against Oakland, the Jets have something like 53 carries for like 180 yards, a little over 3 yards a carry. And it wasn't a pretty game for Chris Johnson. He looked, for whatever reason, kind of a step slow. Ivory never really popped a big run, so they couldn't get anything going in the running game. And in the pass game, it looked like they came in with the plan was that their personnel was going to be 3 receiver sets, 1 tight end, and kind of work everything through this 3 receiver set. For them, it's normally Decker, Curley, and Nelson. And there really wasn't an adjustment after Decker went out. I would have liked to see an adjustment that got kind of Cumberland and Amaro more involved instead of just bumping Salas in and going 3 wide, with him, Curley, and Nelson. Curley made his play down the stretch. Obviously, we know why that got called back, but yeah, I'm curious to see how they adjust with 8 days to hopefully get Amaro and Cumberland more involved, particularly Amaro, who's been very quiet both in terms of his usage and how they're kind of putting him into routes. And, I'm going to guess that Decker doesn't play on Monday. I don't think they want to push him with this hamstring injury, although they pushed it with D. Milliner and we saw what the results were. But it's going to put a strain on guys like Cumberland, Amaro, and to a lesser extent Johnson and Powell in the pass game. I kind of got off topic on scapegoats. Personally, I was most frustrated with the coaching, and I guess that kind of plays off that as well. I don't want to pile on Rex Ryan for poor sideline management because he didn't really do anything wrong, but when you see that timeout happen, you see the wasted timeouts, you see the penalties again, you see some of the clock management issues, it's hard not to be kind of frustrated with the coaching and the way the Jets kind of didn't adjust when the Packers started making their run. Connor, where were your biggest frustrations with how the Jets played, particularly in that second through fourth quarter?
It was definitely that they couldn't get the run game going because this was a game where it's so rare for the Jets to put up 21 points in a first half and be up that, holding such a commanding lead, and they can't get the run game going to close it out. That doesn't sound like the Jets at all. It sounds like the polar opposite of the Jets, who can always pretty much get a run game going but don't score points. And it was pretty frustrating. I don't want to put a scapegoat on anyone, but with the coaching, you're right. One thing I will say, I thought the most impressive player on the offensive side of the ball before, not counting Decker's injury, was definitely Gino Smith. I thought he was absolutely fantastic, just trying to make plays. And that relates, what was disappointing is that nobody on this team after Decker went out, besides Curley, could make a play. And I kind of blame the coaching on that because you're trotting out guys like Greg Salas and David Nelson who have starting to show that they're not going to make the play. And guys like Jeff Cumberland, as much as he can't block, which he shouldn't be in that situation anyway, he's a pass-catching threat, and so is Jason Morrow. And I feel like they didn't work them in the right way, and it was pretty disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Gino really kind of rolling there in the first half. I think he started 8 of 10. He had the rushing touchdown through a beautiful touchdown pass to Eric Decker from the route to the throw. It was literally the kind of, you couldn't have scripted anything better in your head from the second the Jets signed Eric Decker than that play. Beating a top end corner like Sam Shields and the slant and go, and Gino just dropping in an absolute dime. I mean, he was playing terrific, and like you said, I think everything kind of started to turn on that interception, and it was a play. Now that I've kind of rewatched it, Sudfeld's wide open. Gino steps into that throw. He gets drilled by Winter's guy. The ball flutters up. At 5'11", Tremont Williams goes up and gets it over Sudfeld. I never want to pass blame an interception. Gino always gets his share of blame for any turnover, and he has 3 through 2 games, which is too many. But when you saw that interception, which I think ultimately turned the game, what were your thoughts on the play? And, when you first watched that through again, not in real time, what were your thoughts on what kind of responsibility lied for that?
Well, it was disappointing from 3 ends because, one, that same move that tackle pulled on Winters is what I pointed out. I actually posted a GIF of it over preseason against the Giants. It's this weird punch move that D tackles use on Winters where they kind of swipe him high, and he just gets flustered, almost like he's dazed, and they run right past him. And then he turns around to grab the guy because he doesn't want his quarterback to get killed. And if you're going to get beat in literally half a second in this league, you're just not going to last long, no matter how good you run block or play the week before against the Oakland Raiders. So that was really disappointing because he almost got his quarterback killed. And it led to a turnover because, like you said, Sudfeld was open. Gino saw him. It was a great read, and he would have slinged the ball, and he got popped. And if you're Sudfeld, you have to throw the cornerback last-ditch effort because as a guy with that size, he should be able to catch the ball over him. But if you're not going to do that, at least knock it away. And if you're not going to do that, take the offensive pass interference and at least give your team a chance to get a field goal, not a turnover. So that was just really disappointing on all fronts.
Absolutely. I mean, you as a receiver, you have to do everything in your power to make sure that ball is not picked off and, literally rip that guy down from behind. Take the penalty, take whatever you need to. Just don't let him catch the ball that easily. And I hope Gino gave him an earful on the sideline for that, or I hope at least Morningway did, because you just can't have that happen. And obviously it was frustrating to see the defense let Rogers go 97 yards that easily. One last question on the offense before we flip over real quick to just talking about the secondary. Do you think there's the possibility that we're going to see Ibushi play a guard, whether it's over Cologne or Winters in the next few weeks? Cologne didn't play well week 1. Winters didn't play well week 2. I don't think Cologne was all that great on Sunday either. Are we nearing a point where we might see a couple series of Ibushi, or maybe they consider making a switch? If they do make a switch, who's the guy more likely to get bumped out of the lineup, or is it kind of too premature to think like that?
I mean, it's definitely an interesting thought, and it's not premature when you see a play as concerning as that, and it's not something we haven't seen before because we saw it last year with Winters, and we saw it a little bit in the preseason. And it sucks because he's been pretty consistent outside of these one-hit pass rush moves that eat him up. But I definitely think it's something you have to look at because when you look at a guy like Ibushi, he had a really nice preseason, a really nice offseason, and he's shown against the pass that he doesn't get turned around like that. I don't know what he brings as a run blocker to the table, but I mean the bottom line is eventually you'll have to look in one direction. But Winters is going to have his chance. Unfortunately for him, I don't know how many fronts he's going to play that are really going to be dominating interior fronts. So if he can't handle them, then it's a serious concern. But I mean, it's not like he's going up against a guy like Jarrell Casey on the Titans or Geno Atkins on the Bengals that are just bull everybody. So it's kind of disappointing considering the level of competition.
Moving over to the defense, obviously, I think anybody could see there was going to be some secondary struggles. Aaron Rodgers throws for 340 yards and 3 touchdowns against a lot of teams. The Jets aren't going to be the only team he does it against, particularly in Lambeau. That being said, to let Jordy Nelson go for 209 yards and to let D. Milner be left on him one-on-one coverage in a game that he's coming back for the first time and not playing in 6 weeks, and just to see Milner play 40 snaps in his first game back, I didn't love it. I think Rex is in a way almost setting up a young player to kind of fail in that situation. Like if you're going to bring Milner back, bring him back in 20 snaps. I didn't necessarily see what the motivation was for pulling walls and putting Milner into time. I think they did it when they were up like 21-3 or 14-0. It wasn't like walls had been being beat repeatedly and they decided to just kind of pull him out. So we know Milner took himself out because he was banged up. This is like the 3rd or 4th time he's been sent to the bench either by himself or by Rex in his short career. What is kind of the move going forward in this secondary? Do you rest Milner another week and say, let's wait till he's 100% and go with Walls and Allen again? Or do you bring Milner out again in a limited role? And, how is the playing time going to kind of be distributed going forward? And would the Jets potentially be better off just, when Milner gets healthy, playing Milner and Walls at corner and getting Allen back into more of that third safety kind of slot role? How do they handle the secondary going forward? Obviously, Cutler, Stafford, Rivers, Manning, Brady, next 5 quarterbacks on deck. So, how do you think we'll see this break down?
Well, I was actually thinking about this last night a little bit today, is that the problem is the Jets' secondary is just an awful matchup for the Bears' wide receiving core because right now you're at a point where you can't trot D. Milner out there if he's not 100% because it's, like you said, it's a waste. And you look what he did, Jordy Nelson did. He's getting beat off the line. It's not even like he's hanging around. He's getting beat off the line, and that's a planting problem. And he's had an ankle injury. So what do you think's going on there? He's not planting right. He's not cutting right off the line of scrimmage. And he can't even jam into guys. So it's just a waste right now. But the problem you have going into this week is that you have a target like Alshon Jeffrey, who's notorious for catching the ball over people. And our corners, Darren Walls at least, has the ball caught over him often, and that's his main problem. You can run with anybody, but he gets the ball caught over him. But then are you going to put Walls on Brandon Marshall? These are the problems that you need. You need Antonio Allen on Brandon Marshall because Brandon Marshall trucks through linebackers, and you need a tackler like Allen that could actually at least contain Marshall. When I say contain, I said if Antonio Allen could hold him to like 80 yards, then we're talking about the Jets. The Jets can win the game. But then you have Walls and Jeffrey. And in the red zone, that's an absolute disaster. And is Calvin Pryor ready to play the cover 1 role over the top? Because Rex refuses to run a cover 2. He keeps DeJuan Landry right up in the slot against the box because Kyle Wilson needs help, and they basically play a 2-man zone on whoever Kyle Wilson's covering now. So to be honest with you, the secondary concerns are legit. Whether people want to hide around this or not, it's a serious concern because of the scheme they're running. They're trying to patch it up, and it's costing them. Because you're leaving guys like Milner one-on-one, and then Pryor has to come in, and he's too late. So it's going to be a really tough thing to figure out. I think right now they just don't really have the personnel to run what they want in the secondary until Milner is fully healthy. And, I mean, like I said, it's just going to be mix and match and patchwork, and it might not be pretty.
Doesn't that fall more on Rex then to kind of adjust his scheme accordingly if he doesn't have the personnel necessary to run the look that you're saying that he's kind of trotting out? Is the answer to run a little more zone, rush 3, rush 4, drop more guys into coverage, try to keep everybody in front of you, and hope that a guy like Cutler, is going to get a tip pass, going to make a couple mistakes, and instead of kind of leaving your guys on an island where they could get a chunk play, 30 yards, 50 yards, 80 yards, make them kind of work their way down the field, for an 8-10 play drive. Isn't it that more on Rex and Dennis Thurman to adjust, their scheme accordingly until Milner's truly back and at 100%, and Allen's a little more synced up and comfortable at the corner?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Part of it does fall on the coaching staff, but you have to give credit for Rex. Right now, the Jets are the best run-stopping team in football, and they've been like that for most of Rex's tenure, which, that's a really impressive feat. And they do stop the run, but the problem is Rex does have to adjust because maybe you have to take a guy out of the box and run the cover 2 and give your guys help. And maybe, you know what, maybe Matt Forte does run for 60, 70, 80 yards, but at least the Jets can have a chance to win the game by giving help over the top to guys like Jeffrey and Marshall and even Martellus Bennett in the red zone. So I definitely agree with you that part of it does fall on the coaching staff because it's not helping your players. And when I do say they don't have the personnel, it's mostly in the secondary and a lot of it due to injuries. But I just don't understand how you can really accept trotting Kyle Wilson out there week after week after what we see. It's just there's not even an effort there on that touchdown catch by the Packers last week, and that's what's concerning. Is I mean, it's getting really old, and part of it does fall on Idzik for just letting the corner market slip past him. And I know people are like trying to play the game. Oh, well, look at Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie now, and all of these guys. But you could say the same thing the other way because Altron Werner looks absolutely fantastic, and the Bucs gave him a very reasonable deal, making about $6.5 million a year, and he's one of the best corners in the league. So it's also Rex not being equipped for what he wants to do, and then injuries, which every team suffers. And the Jets are built like a team that, if they stay healthy, they can compete with anyone in the league, and I truly mean that. But that's just not sustainable in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing – they were very healthy last year, and that's not the case this year already out of the gate with Milner being banged up to start the season, with McDougal being out for the year, with now Decker being banged up. And so we kind of shift our focus to this Monday night game against Chicago, and what I really kind of feel like is a 3-game kind of swing stretch in this Jets schedule. I think most people probably anticipated them being 1-1 going into these 3 games. After these 3 games, they have 2 games that are probably going to be somewhere between 6 and 10-point underdogs in, home against Denver, at New England on a short week. You look at this Bears game, I think it's being leveled as being basically about a pick'em game. I think Detroit would probably be around somewhere the same level. And depending on how those 2 games go, I could see them being somewhere between 4 and 5-point underdogs in San Diego. These are games, particularly the Chicago and Detroit game at home, where the Gino and Rex have done well over there. They're 7-2 in their last 9 home games since Gino has taken over a quarterback that these are games that the Jets are going to just have to find a way to win. Particularly, I think Chicago is probably a better team than Detroit. Detroit really got smacked around by Carolina last week, a team who isn't built all that different than the Jets. But either way, I mean, these are going to be tough matchups because, as you said, Chicago, Detroit can throw the football down the field. That being said, they also have their own flaws, particularly, Chicago's had some issues stopping the run. They haven't ran the ball all that well. They were really, they lost to Buffalo at home such a season. They were getting smacked around by the Niners in primetime before they had a great second-half comeback led by Marshall and Cutler. So when you see this matchup with the Bears, you talked about some of the struggles that the Jets are going to have stopping Jeffrey, stopping Marshall, stopping Bennett. Where can the Jets take advantage of Chicago's weaknesses and try to hopefully even this out and, take one on Monday night at home?
Yeah, I know I've sounded like it's doom and gloom, and I think that's the wrong approach because I definitely think both these teams, like you said, the Lions and the Bears, have glaring weaknesses on the defense that are just they're not going to make it anywhere in the playoffs with these kind of weaknesses because good teams exploit that, and that's what the Jets have to show. They have to show that they're a good team that's going to exploit your weakness. And to beat the Bears, it's going to be about clock control, which is something they seem to fail to do against the Packers last week, and it would be a really nice sign if they turn that around and make the coaching adjustments this week. You have to see a nice mix of Ivory and Chris Johnson. I mean, there's some spots in the Bears defense where there's just being holes opened up and teams are just running straight through them. But what's more interesting now is you could take the shots on the Bears with Charles Tillman out for the year, because they're going to be starting Kyle Fuller, who looks really good last week, and but he's still a rookie. Don't be caught up by the 2 interceptions. You could still target a guy like that. Jennings is a good corner, but he's about 5'8", so you got to get out there and take your shots against him, especially if Decker does play and they put Jennings on Decker. That's a mismatch right there. And a lot of people, I think Sam Shields is one of the better corners in the league, and we saw what Decker did to him last week. So the whole shutdown corner myth is definitely overblown, and I think the Jets can really put up, honestly, they could put up 28 points easily on this Bears defense, but they have to take the shots.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to. I mean, again, I feel I felt this way about Green Bay, and I feel this way about Chicago and Detroit. These teams are going to score points. You're not going to hold these teams to 6, 10, 13 points. The Jets are going to have to go out, score touchdowns, get somewhere, in the mid to high 20s. And against Green Bay, they really needed 30, and they're going to have to play very well on offense. And it can't just, they need to run the ball better. We know that, but it can't just be this kind of ultra-conservative run the ball kind of go into your shell. This is a game, and these are games that Gino Smith needs to play very well in, and he could be short-handed without Decker, and it could be difficult, but I hope that if Decker doesn't play, the Jets find a way to take advantage of Amaro's height and size on the Bears' safeties and linebackers, find a way to do the same thing with Cumberland and Sudfeld, and then get Johnson and Powell going in the screen game. I think we saw some success with that week 1. Didn't really see any success with it in week 2, save for a couple swing passes out to Powell, who looked pretty good off the bench and, depending on a week-to-week situation, could maybe be poised for a bigger role depending on the game. But Gino's going to have to play very well. And these are games, again, that the Jets just can't, afford any kind of killer turnovers, and they need to force some turnovers themselves. I mean, they fell on 1 fumble through 2 games. They need an interception. They need a strip sack. They need an interception return deep in Chicago territory that's going to get them some easy points, because they're never going to move up to being that kind of top-tier, top 5 to 7 defense until they start creating a couple more big plays. And, what do you think offensively and even defensively with the turnovers that the Jets are really going to need to do to kind of pace with a Chicago offense that's probably going to score somewhere in the 20s on Monday?
I mean, it all comes down to creating turnovers, which you're just waiting for this team to do. And recovering that fumble on the first play of the game last week is not creating a turnover. It's just luck, to be honest with you. And it's nice that Sheldon Richardson has that kind of awareness and skills. But at the bottom line, you got to see an interception from somebody. And, I mean, you look at that Devin McCourty interception for the Patriots last week, and look what these guys do after they make the play. You got to get to the house, because you just don't know what your offense is going to do these days. Look at the Patriots right now. I mean, Tom Brady is almost regarded as a weak point right now for them. I mean, you look at the throws he's throwing over 15 yards. It's not pretty. And I'm not saying he won't turn it around, but the guys in that defense, when they make a play like that, they say, hey, we have to take this to the house and put up the points ourselves. And I think every defense in the league should take that initiative, and the Jets especially. And that's not even taking a shot at Gino Smith, who looks really good. It's just a matter of helping your offense out and taking advantage of a bunch of guys on offense that really aren't trying to make that aren't going to be that good at making that tackle anyway. So it comes down to getting points in the end zone from a defensive side, which we really haven't seen since Cromartie and Revis were on the field at the same time.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, this team needs to just force more turnovers. They need to come up with interceptions. They need to catch the ball when it hits their defensive back's hands and, create some easy points. And those are things they're going to need, particularly if they're short-handed. If a guy like Decker can't play on Monday, they're going to need some extra points. I don't know if that comes from defense or special teams or from Geno Smith just playing, that well. But it will be a challenge Monday night. I'm curious to see how a lot of these picks end up going. I think it's going to be a very tight game. I think that's why you see the line, as tight as it is. It's way too early to tell. It's only Tuesday. I would think that, considering their home and considering how well Gino has played for the most part, this is a game that I think is reasonable to expect the Jets could pull out a very close one. I think it's going to be a tight game throughout, and they're going to have to make plays in the fourth quarter. But this game, is really a toss-up, and I think it can end up kind of being the same thing with Detroit. Any kind of thoughts on a prediction going into Monday night? Are your expectations that the Jets are going to leave Monday as a 2-1 team?
Yeah, it's tough for me. I mean, I'm going to be at the game. It's probably the only game I'll get to attend all year because, fortunately, I do work Sundays, and I'm really hoping for a win. I see this as both ways. Right now, if I had to pick a spread, I would call it dead even right now, and I saw you tweet that earlier in the week, and it's going to come down to 2 things. I mean, you could look at it. The Jets can make a play on defense and control the clock on the run, and they could easily win this game, just like when they went into Atlanta last year and beat the Falcons. I think it's the same thing with the Bears. I think you can contain a high passing attack and build the run game and pull out a close win. But at the same time, I have my concerns on the defensive side of the ball right now, specifically in the secondary. I know it's been beaten into the ground. It's not what Jets fans want to hear. But you have to be realistic. I think Brandon Marshall is the top wide receiver in this league. And the X factor of this game, if I'm being completely honest, is Jay Cutler. Because when have we ever seen consistency from Jay Cutler in this league in his career? And it's never happened. If Sheldon Richardson and Mo Wilkerson get in his face, he's a guy that could throw 3 picks even to a very suspect secondary. So if I had to say a prediction, I mean, I don't really see this as a favorable matchup for the Jets. I think they probably lose by 4 points. But if they can make a play on Cutler, there's no reason why they can't win. So it's just a toss-up. Like we said, it's an even spread.
I agree. It's going to be an interesting one and definitely a critical game on the Jets schedule. I will also be there Monday night, so I'll see you there at some point, whether before or during the game. Looking forward to it.
That'd be good.
Going to sign off here. Stay with us throughout the rest of the week. Make sure to check out Nimble TV. Not every Jets game is going to be on national TV this year. When it's not, always link up to them for an easy way to watch it. Glad I was able to help out a few people on Twitter with that this week. We're going to be doing some giveaways thanks to NRG Energy throughout the end of the week. We have gear packs, which include Jet jerseys, sunglasses, hats. So stay with us on Twitter. Our first giveaway is going to kind of be worked through that. We're going to have different gear and tickets to give away only to people who subscribe to this YouTube channel and follow us at NRG on Twitter. So we'll make sure to send out some footage from the game Monday, and then we'll be back here next Tuesday to hopefully talk about the 2-1 Jets. In the meantime, we'll be rolling through with our film breakdowns, our roundtables, just like we did last week. Kind of got an extra day to dig into the coaches' tape. Connor, thanks for joining me. Go back to your Hoboken living. Hope you're settling in well over there.
All right, Joe. Thanks, man.
All right, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you online this week.